H-Town in the summer, right around the time that I got my first number. Put it on the board, keep score, living more. Let that shit that went down at the 304. That's the place where I became a man. Gotta spend a couple nights with us to understand. Came into the city thinking that I had a plan, but the shit had turned upside down. Look at everything we doing right now. Yeah, so this the life that I was envisioning back when I would ride with Jolene to Dominican. 4 years and 1,000 miles older. Never paid mine, now my mind paid forward. Been growing from the moment we arrived. Come and take a step outside and feel alive. Only way to really know it's right, so take that time and breathe it in. Only way to see if there's something worth drowning for. Say if you're meant for more. So now I'm swimming in the deep, cause we believe it. I always waited for the daylight, but I just wanna let it all go now. Nights that turn to memories with y'all. Everything been changing. Ran away so I could run it all. That's the way we made it. Sacrifices made it, so I hear you say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And now it's business casual on Michigan Avenue. Bypass the line to find a chick with some attitude. While you stick to your latitude, I've been different in passing. You funny how we learned the most from the shit we did after school. Like not to drown in the sorrows, I'm only here for the day and I'm running out of tomorrows. And so my thoughts are more about my family and future earnings. But the way I'm climbing now the ladder isn't too concerning. Everything I said it happened, it happened. I got some bigger ideas than average. The fact is I wouldn't be here without support and opportunity. I'm grateful every day for the blessings that's been accrued, but still I turned a silver spoon into a china set. For those who think that I ain't work for this, the same ones who ain't find it yet. At times I doubted I'd remember what my dad said. Put the work in early, it'll pay off on the back end. And now I'm looking back on all my mind is letting me. I was 18 looking for dreams and some memories. Little did I know that I'd become the man I'm near, and it's been molded by a culture and these years of experience. You see, I fell in love, I found a family beyond my own. I learned to live, I'm out here now, but I'm not alone. Came to the city with a checklist, and now I leave it filled with all X's. Thank you for it all. Nights that turn to memories with y'all. Everything been changing. Ran away so I could run it all. That's the way we made it. Sacrifices made it, so I hear you say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. H-Town in the summer, right around the time that I got my first number. Put it on the board, keep score, living more. Let that shit that went down at the 304. That's the place where I became a man. Gotta spend a couple nights with us to understand. Came into the city thinking that I had a plan, but the shit had turned upside down. Look at everything we're doing right now.
Looking in the mirror, and all I see, someone I'm supposed to be. Looking into my reflection, no connection. You aren't what I used to be. Can't you feel the change in me? I'm not the one that you held on to, you belong to. This time, no
3,
one can pretend.
2, 1. What's going on, guys? Volzy and BuckHeels, Brian and Matt here with the Double V Sports Talk again of the new year, first one of 2021, coming at you live here on Volzy Twitch, BuckHeels Twitch, and then again on Double V Sports Talk Facebook live and Double V Sports Talk at YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe there on YouTube. Don't forget to follow, like, and hit the notification tab there on Facebook. And then, of course, go on to Twitch, follow BuckHeels, follow Volzy, leave that sub if you so feel like. And Amazon Prime subs are always appreciated. Now, let me ask you this, Matt.
All right.
We had all these games going on um, over New Year's, and obviously the two most important ones are Alabama and Notre Dame and Clemson, Ohio State. Now, neither one of those turned into be much of a game. All right. So tell me this. What did you take away the most from the Alabama Notre Dame game?
I let's see. I'm trying to recap. That was the game. 1 second. Oh, guys, sneeze. I took away from it more. I was trying to look at more Alabama's defense because my only question mark about Alabama, what I've told you would be their defense and how they kind of locked down. They although Book was able to he was able to get his stuff. They still only allowed Northern Dame put up only 14 points, and that was the biggest thing I want to see how, because we all know this offense for Alabama is probably one of the, I would say this is the best offense that Nick Saban has had in his history at Alabama. But what he's
Absolutely.
been known for was his defense, and I wanted to see how they would match up against Notre Dame, who has not recently, like in the ACC championship, but has shown to be, they've been able to put up points. I would just say so. That was the thing I was looking out for.
Well, and so what with the what Alabama or what Ohio State can do here on defense? What do you think they're going to match up with, like from a defensive standpoint versus their offense?
For Ohio State.
No, Alabama versus Ohio.
Oh,
Ohio
so
State's defense versus, or sorry, Ohio State's offense versus the Clemson defense that you're just talking about.
what was the thing?
How do you think they'll match up?
You mean okay? So you mean Ohio State versus Alabama? How they will match up?
Alabama's defense
Yeah.
versus Ohio State's offense, because you were just
Okay.
talking about Alabama's defense.
It's gonna have to it's gonna have to match up just because we got to see firsthand the offensive power that we've been waiting to see from Ohio State. Because we've heard everyone talk about it. Ohio State has weapons. Justin Fields probably had the best game of his career against Clemson, whose defense I was considering. People were considering probably the second, maybe third best defense in the nation. So how Alabama can definitely match up with the front seven. They're still very young in the secondary, but for me, it comes down to the trenches because Ohio State's offensive defensive line, I think, is better than Alabama's front seven or their lines. So for me, it will come down to who wins the line of scrimmage against this teams for the Ohio State's offense versus Alabama's defensive line.
See, we already know that Alabama has the best, in my opinion, has the best offense in the nation by far. You have a Heisman Trophy candidate in Mac Jones, who ends up going 25 for 30, throwing for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, versus a Notre Dame defense has been relatively solid. I think we all knew what was going to happen in that game regardless, but still a solid, still a solid team. Then, of course, you get Najee Harris, who should be a Heisman candidate, who ended up going for a buck 25. And then obviously what he's been able to do all year long, coming out of the backfield, catching the ball, and then adding on to it. I mean, we saw what he did in the SEC championship game there. Just absolutely remarkable time. And then, of course, you have Devontae Smith, who went for 3 touchdowns on 7 catches, 130 yards. another Heisman candidate, and probably after the performance from the other night, even though the votes have been in for a while, is my guess to be the Heisman Trophy winner. And it always seems like Alabama's always been stacked at running back and receiver, and has. Why does this keep going off? Stop. Um, but it always, and then it's always had a decent quarterback, um, until they got obviously what Jalen Hurts has been able to do, and what Tua was able to do.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw
But
that
Mac Jones
meme.
really seems like the real deal,
I don't know
and
if
it'll
you
be
saw that
interesting to see.
meme of the 2013 running backs corps or the team who was all running backs on that team. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, TJ Yelton, and
yeah, yeah.
Drake. Kenyon
Well,
Drake.
the year that we went to Alabama and played them in 2014, that was the year that Kamara had transferred to Tennessee, and we had those other three. Their starting three were T.J. Yeldon, Kenyon Drake, and Derrick Henry was third string.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, no, it's always been a interesting matchup. So let's talk little bit about this Ohio State Clemson game. You know, Ohio State ends up getting down early. Um, we obviously get the targeting there on Justin Fields, and that seems to be where things switched up, where the momentum kind of changed. From there, you have Alabama going for 639 total yards, doing 250 of it in the ground and almost 400 of it in the air. Just a remarkable effort by Justin Fields and company. But here's the thing that I'm most impressed with was Ohio State's front four. They showed, like I've been saying all year, that they have the best D line in the country.
Mm-hmm. They're very
And it
underrated.
showed when you hold Clemson to 44 rushing yards, who has Trevor Lawrence and ETN back there, both able to move, and you hold Trevor Lawrence to -8 yards. You get ETN to 32 yards. I mean, and we saw when they beat when Notre Dame beat them, what the biggest deciding factor was. That was not getting Travis Etienne going, and it really showed in that regard, um, that they couldn't get the run going, and so it allowed them to really just tee off on them in the back end. Um, and just an extremely impressive performance by that front four. And I think it'll make a very good national championship matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you seen when James, I can Skakey, whenever he got ejected, we saw how he was in the national championship last year when he got ejected. Once he got out of the game, this game and that national championship game, and the games he missed this week, this defense, he's the glue. He's that quarterback of that defense. Once he was out, and you just see this defense struggle. I don't know. Maybe someone needs to tell him he needs to tackle with his head up because that's twice now where he gets ejected while his head's just lowered. I
He
don't.
could have thrown his face
Yeah,
mask into the ribs and it would have been just fine.
I'm more worried about him because if you watch the replay, the impact he takes because he lowers his head from the neck. But minus that, it just showed Fields was just able to do whatever he wanted against his defense. Time after time, you just see Ohio State just moving the ball down, and like you said on Clemson or Ohio State's defense, yeah, it was like what Clemson wanted to do was you seen this year when they're able to get the running game going, they are unstoppable. Their only loss was when they couldn't get the running game going against Notre Dame in the middle of the season, and Indian had was it? I want to say
It
close
was
to
like
what
20 some yards against Notre
yeah,
Dame.
I want to say it was like close to what we saw yesterday. So and or Friday, sorry.
Oh, yeah, it
Um,
was very close to it.
so it just seemed like when they're not able to get him, and then Lawrence was they couldn't get those read options, and Lawrence was like you said, -8. He was getting pressured all game, so it just made it really struggle because they had to go one dimension. And like I said, this Ohio State defense, although they've had games where they have been in shootouts, they've only allowed average, I think, 19 points a game. So they have some the Indiana game and stuff like that, but the last three games they've only allowed 16 points. So they're not a defense to fall asleep against.
No, not at all. And I think Clemson's very young secondary was extremely exposed, and it was I mean, it was rough to watch for him. I'm kind of glad I'm not a Clemson fan, to be honest, because that would have been a really tough game to watch from that perspective, because it had to be frustrating. Saw an offense that was clicking early, going rather well, and then all of a sudden, Ohio State defense that just turned up and decided, you know what, you're not going to do this to us anymore. We're going to shut you down from here, and that's exactly what they did. And then all of a sudden, we see Ohio State going a 28-point run, and just, I mean, once they got up 35-14 at halftime, you knew that this was over. I mean, there were hopes and glimmers that Clemson may be able to make a run, but after Lawrence getting sacked 3 times in a row there at about the 8-minute mark or so of the fourth quarter to put it within 2 scores, um, kind of that was the end of that. But so let's talk about this Ohio State Alabama matchup.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the first time they've met.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama right now is 3-1 against Ohio State, but Ohio State's only win came in the very first college playoff semifinals in the 2015 Sugar Bowl, where they ended up beating Alabama 42-35. I'm sure you remember that game. That was when T.J. Barrett and Braxton Miller had both been hurt, and Cardell Jones had to come in.
Well, that was a game after they beat them to go to the national championship.
That's what I said. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
they
was
beat Oregon.
exactly. And obviously, they had Zeke Elliott, who ended up running for 230 yards in that game. And after falling behind early, they made a roll to get back in. So, you know, a game that a lot of us remember. How do you think this game stacks up? Where do you see the issues for both Alabama and Ohio State moving forward?
So when I'm looking at the game, one of the big issues that I don't know the kind of announcements was happening when you were streaming last night. Offensive coordinator Steve Starkskin for
Start
Alabama,
again. Yeah.
finalized the deal to become a Texans head coach. So
Yep.
we've seen this before. We saw it with Lane Kiffin leaving, signing to go to be, I think it was a Florida Atlantic head coach when they were going to go into a
Mhm.
national championship game. So my question is, how much of this impact for Alabama would this be? I don't know on top of my head. You maybe asked me. I don't know if he was the play caller. I want to say he was the offensive play
He
caller for
was.
Alabama. So I want to
He
know how
was.
much that impacts. Um, are they going to try to? Who's going to be making the play calls? Are they going to be because having someone else calling plays for the quarterback who Mac Jones have had him in his ear, that's going to make a impact. Um, because he knows what. So I want to see how that affects it. Minus that, we know how powerful these offenses are. Um, I think people are more scared of Alabama because we've seen them in more games compared to Ohio State. This was only their 7th game of the season. But for me, Alabama, they're gonna have to protect the secondary. They are very young in the secondary, and I feel like that's the weakness for Ohio State be able to attack. Um, and for Ohio State, they have two advantages. They can take of they I think like we talked about. You talked about Ohio State's defensive line. Ohio State's offensive line, I believe, is the best in the country. And what we saw against them was able to do against Clemson. Um, they were able to just push them around. and I think they won't have as easy as time against Alabama, but they'll still will have their openings.
Now let me tell you this, just because it just came across a couple hours ago.
Okay.
Steve Sarkisian said that he will remain at Alabama through the national championship game.
Okay. So I know sometimes when okay, so
Yep, a
that'll
lot
fix
a lot
that.
of times yes, but
Yeah.
he said that he's going to stay for the national championship
Okay.
game.
A lot of times they just I know Lane Kiffin did not when he signed.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's big for Alabama. Now I'm going to flip it to Ohio State's defense. So everyone's saying Alabama has this three-head monster, and they do with Harris, Smith, and Jones. For me, I'm going to let Jones beat me, and I'm going to take away the other two heads. Meaning, I trust the Ohio State's defensive line front seven be able to not get out of positions. The biggest thing for it, you got to tackle Harris. You can't let him get the open field. You got to bring him down in the first tackle. Although that's very hard, we've seen they have to be on time with tackling. And for Smith, you have to double. You have to keep that safety over him, and you cannot let him get in the single coverage, the one on ones. Jalen Wagner didn't play Friday. I know he's questionable, but if he's able to play, it's going to be more trouble against this Ohio State. But for Ohio State, they can't play. He's just too talented to play one on one. You have to put someone over him to help.
Well, the problem you get into with that is if you put all your attention on Devontae Smith, now you've got Najee Harris being able to come out of the backfield because that's what he does really well now. You know, he'd struggled with that in the past, but he's really worked on that and it's shown. And so now you get a very good running back who not only can take it up the gut, take it around the edge, but can also come out of the backfield and catch the ball. He can line up and empty, and then has shown the ability to be a great route runner. And so that's where the issue comes in, where if you try to put all of your focus on Devontae Smith, is Najee Harris will torch you. He will absolutely torch you. I do think that in my mind, I think it's going to come down to the front four for Ohio State. And can they bottle up Najee Harris in the run game and allow themselves to get pressure on Mac Jones in the pass game? You know, Mac Jones has been rather protected this season. Alabama's offensive line is probably going to win the award for the best offensive line in the country, very similar to what we saw with LSU last year, which is a big reason why they won the national championship. Joe Burrow had all the time he needed back there, plus he had weapons everywhere. And so I think this is going to be a real challenge. I do think this is going to be a little bit of a shootout because, I mean, Alabama's scoring more points than I have ever seen Alabama score in my life. I mean, I remember plenty of 10-7 Alabama victories. But they're throwing up points left and right, and it's rather unbelievable. I mean, you have Ohio State that's averaging 43.2 yards, or sorry, 43.4 points a game, and then you have Alabama averaging 48.2 points a game. Just absolutely unbelievable stats by those two. But it will be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see how this Ohio State defense matches up with this Alabama offense, and how um, Justin Fields does coming off of the game that he did. I mean, you know he's going to be sore for the next couple of days after first off that helmet shot, some of the things he played through, some of the other shots that he took along the way. He's going to be feeling that. You know he's going to be feeling that through practice. As a competitor, you know you'll end up getting through that just fine to be able to keep rolling. But how does that affect him moving forward? Can Ohio State continue with this run game? Um, and then can Justin Fields end up leading this Ohio State team to victory?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I expect also it's going to be a shootout because at the end of the day, um, I'll give the lean to Ohio State, or sorry, to Alabama has a more explosive, complete offense. Um, just because I think Ohio or Alabama has the better skillful players on the skill side. But to me, like I said, this game's going to come down to that those which defense makes the stops, because at the end of the day it's going to be that who makes enough stops or makes that maybe that one extra stop defensively that might have cost the offense from being able to score or keep score. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's going to be which defense that steps up to make just like you're not going to be able to stop them. Who able to slow them down or trip them up to be able to let your offense be able to get that lead or even hold that lead. You know what I'm saying?
Now, before I ask you this question about the national championship game, on Tuesday we have the Heisman Trophy ceremony. All right, with the candidates being Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, and Kyle Trask. Who, in your mind, because you got to remember the votes have already been in, so the playoffs didn't count. Who in your and the bowl game didn't count, so that game that Kyle Trask had the other day did not count as well. Who, in your mind, should win the Heisman Trophy win or the Heisman, and then who, in your mind, if it's different, will win?
So I'm you who should win and who in mine will win. You're saying?
I'm saying who should win, and if it's different, then who do you if who should win? And then if the answer is different, who do you think is the best or will win? Will actually win?
Um, I think it's a two-person race. Um, and the reason why I think that when I think of these four, I think of it's hard. I think it's gonna come down to Trevor Lawrence and Javante Smith, and Trevor Lawrence, I think being out for those games hurts him because Devontae Smith, ultimately, I think he will win it. He is putting up statistic records, receiver records that we haven't seen since Howard put up, and he was the last receiver to win it. Um, Desmond Howard, and just what he's done offensively with those weapons, he stand out even more because they have other receivers out there that's going to be top draft pick. They have Harris, and what he's doing, it's like if he was doing that as just the only receiver, or even like if they had no run game, it would be like okay. I was like, man, he's the only person. Well, they have multiple weapons, and he's still doing that. So for me, I would say it's Smith.
I have to agree with you. I mean, the what Devontae Smith's been able to do this year has been absolutely remarkable. I mean, he's got 105 catches for 1,641 yards. He has 20 touchdowns, and is just absolutely unbelievable in what he's been able to accomplish. And the it's kind of funny because I think that the only person that can really compete with him in a Heisman race isn't even a candidate. And you know who I'm gonna say? I think it's Najee Harris.
Yep,
I think Najee
I
Harris is the
agree
one
with that.
that should be in the talk. I think
He's probably number five if they had five finalists.
oh, I guarantee he was. But it's just one of those things where I find it incredibly disrespectful to not put somebody who rushes for 24 touchdowns and then catches another three. And just, I mean, the year that he has had, he is averaging 6.1 yards on the ground per carry and throughout the season, and then averaging another 9.6 in the year. It's been incredibly entertaining to watch with him. But I do think
I
that
got
Devontae Smith will be the one to end up pulling it out in the end.
I got a question. So who would you? I'll go. I'll go first, and I'll let you since I know mine. out of these four, from one, well, from 4 to 1, where would you have them in your Heisman finalists, like finishing? Because for me, I would have starting at 4. Well, I'll start 1 since we already know my one. Devontae Smith, number 1. Trevor Lawrence, runner up. Kyle Trask being third, and then Mac Jones 4. Now, you said the votes are already in. We're not talking bowls. After seeing the bowl game, I would put Kyle last because um, that
Hey, that was
game
bad.
against Oklahoma was really ugly. But before that, I'm putting him third. But if after it, he would definitely be. He would actually. I would knock him out and put I'll put Harris up there. But before the bowl game, he's still my third.
No, absolutely. It would be probably Devontae Smith. And then after that, I mean, obviously before the ball game, I thought Kyle Trask had the best opportunity. I mean, he had 43 touchdowns on the year, only 5 interceptions, obviously threw for over 4,000 yards. We saw the performance that he had against Alabama there in the SEC championship game. After that, it's hard not to say that Mac Jones, who's second in college football right now in passing yards and touchdowns behind Kyle Trask, being there, then Trevor Lawrence, who didn't have statistically a great year compared to what he's had because he did miss 2 games. And then on top of that, he still didn't put up the numbers that he had in the past. I thought last year he probably had a better chance of winning the Heisman statistically. And I think the biggest thing that Trevor Lawrence has going for him is the fact that he's Clemson's starting quarterback and he's the best quarterback in the nation. But I don't think that he outplayed those other 2 quarterbacks this year. And part of it is also those other 2 quarterbacks had a lot more weapons than he did. I mean, his wide receiver core had been absolutely demolished due to injuries and COVID and whatnot. Whereas, um, obviously Mac Jones has Devontae Smith and company that have been able just to do what they've done. Kyle Trask had Tooney and Pitts, and it's just they had a lot more weapons than Trevor Lawrence had. And so I do have a lot of respect for what Trevor Lawrence has been able to do over the last little bit.
Would
But
you say
in my mind, he falls last out of those 4 because just because you don't have the weapons is not an excuse when it comes to the Heisman.
I have there is 2 questions at Facebook from coming from John Brandt. I hope I pronounced that name. I'm really bad pronouncing. He had 2 questions. He said, well, one of them was not a question, but one was the Najee Harris completely should be there in the finalists. I think we agree. If it was 5 people, they would totally be. But I think for these 4 players, their performances is very hard just to put them 4. Like I said, for me, I feel like Harris or Mac Jones could be that 4th. I feel like, and to get to your point, Brian, to when we were talking about Mac Jones is second in yards, Kyle Trask. Reason, like I feel like Trevor Lawrence is up there. His numbers are not good, but when you're comparing the 3 quarterbacks, like you said, the weapons are the differences. Trevor Lawrence has less weapons compared to them. But the other thing was, that's how I compare Mac Jones to Trevor. Now to Trevor to Kyle, my comparison is when we seen Trevor minus the 2 games that Trevor didn't play. If we're comparing his games he played versus Kyle, Clemson hasn't lost minus the bowl game. They haven't lost with Trevor if you're not counting the bowl games. Compared to Kyle has lost, was it 3 games? And the reason
He
they
did,
lost
and
was
that's
the
understandable.
offensive struggles.
I don't think they lost because of offensive struggles. I think they lost because their secondary is so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I think they lost because their defense didn't do anything. I think the offense did fine. And Branks, I appreciate you tuning in, and checking us out. And after seeing, if we were to count the bowl games, right? If we were to count the bowl games and everything, would I put Justin Fields in there?
Definitely.
I don't know. I think that if I'm going to take somebody out, Najee Harris is the first one to go in. Now, if I end up taking 2 out, then yeah, then he's that next one. But I think Najee Harris is in there over Justin Fields. Um,
Well,
And
if
so
I
if you count the bowl games, Kyle Trask may have knocked himself out, which is
yeah
still kind of ridiculous because he's still the first in the country in passing yards and passing touchdowns by a long shot. And still, even though he threw 3 picks in the bowl game, he still only has 8 on the year. And it's still absolutely incredible performance. But we do know how all that goes into account, how you show up in big games, right? And so he hasn't been showing up in big games. I mean, he showed up in the SEC championship game, that's for sure. And if their defense could have just made one stop, they would have been fine. But I don't think that what Justin Fields has done in these 6 games is more impressive than what Najee Harris has done in these 11 games. And that's the thing. And I'm not trying to compare stats to each other because I know that they've played a significant amount of different games. And unlike Dabo Sweeney, I'm not holding that against Ohio State because they've only been able to control what they can control, and they've won the games that they needed to win along the way. And so I do think Justin Fields has been incredible this year, but I don't think that it outdoes what Najee Harris has done this year.
yeah I would think
And but
my
if there was a sixth, or if I was to say after the bowl games, he would probably be the fifth one because I mean Trevor Lawrence has got to stay in there. I mean he's still the best quarterback in college football. You see what he does, has time and is able to sling it in there. If he didn't have so many drops on the year, people just like running all which ways, um, then he may have actually had the best chance of winning the Heisman. You can't take Mac Jones out because of the performance that he's done. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing an Alabama quarterback throw for 40 touchdowns, and he's going to have it by the time this is all said and done. Um, Obviously, you cannot take Devontae Smith out. I mean, the dude has 20 receiving touchdowns. But the fact that Najee Harris has 24 rushing touchdowns and another 3 in the air blows my mind that he doesn't make it in here. But you know, that's Franks. That's a great question. It's just I don't know.
I would
I
just
think
say
Najee's got it.
for me for Fields, if we counted the bowl games, I would knock Kyle Trask out. And my only reason is this: when we're looking at these two quarterbacks and their bowl games too, you're considering the team difficulty. And although Kyle stats look good and his struggle and his losses in this season, I think would hurt him. When you compare Oklahoma's defense to Clemson's defense is way better than Oklahoma. Although Oklahoma's defense, this is probably the best defense we've seen from Oklahoma recently. When you're comparing these two, I don't think it's a comparison. I think Clemson, hand down, is better defense. So I think at the to the extreme of difficulty, Justin Fields had a tougher opponent compared to Oklahoma, and what we saw with Fields, he was minus the pick, almost perfect compared to Trash, who I was watching that game off and on. He did not look good. And he the throw,
But he also didn't have
minus. I
any
was
of
gonna
his.
say.
He also
I was,
didn't have
yeah,
any of his receivers.
I was about to say minus. He was missing a ton of weapons.
I
Both
mean,
his
he was
top
missing his starting
receivers.
tight end. He was missing his top 4 wide
Yep.
receivers. The top 5 pass catchers on their team were out.
Mm-hmm.
4 of them decided to sit out because of the draft, and then one of them had to sit out because of COVID. Your top 5 receivers all year long are sitting out. Of course, it's going to be difficult
Mm-hmm.
for you. And here's the thing, right? I do think that the problem with being a starting quarterback without your normal receivers is the fact that when they're gone, right, your timing is off with everyone
Mm-hmm.
else. You spend hours and hours working on that timing of them being able to know when they're going to put a foot in the ground and stick it around and come back. You know, you spend hours knowing that how they're going to lean in post and when they're going to make a break and how they shake and how they, if they're going to end up making a post break, do they just put a foot in the ground and go? Do they give a little double take? Little things like that are different based off of who is back there running those routes. And when you have different guys that are out there doing that, you end up missing a good portion of your chemistry. And so it's hard for me to hate on them because of that performance, because of seeing that. Now, Emory Jones, I do think came in and did a great job. But here's the thing nobody's talking about with Emory Jones. Emory Jones is the backup quarterback. they played with a majority of backup wide receivers. So when the twos were in, Emory Jones has been throwing to these guys all season long. When they're in practice and they have the ones go out there and take X amount of reps, you know, Kyle Trask has been throwing to Pitts and has been throwing to Tooney. He's been throwing to all these guys all year long. But when the twos come in, who's throwing them the ball?
Mm-hmm.
And it's Emory Jones. And so that's what I'm saying is like he has that chemistry built up with the receivers that were playing that game. Now, granted, some of those were just dumb decisions, not the picks necessarily, but some were just dumb decisions. But the thing is, you're used to having, I know one of those picks here in the end zone, and everybody's looking, go, oh, what is he thinking? That's so dumb. When you're so used to having a 6'6" tight end back there that you can just throw the ball up into the corner and trust that he's going to go get it, it makes a big difference. Because here's the things I didn't see from Florida in that game when it came to the receiving core. I didn't see the receivers attacking the ball that I'd seen them in the past. The ball's coming, they're expecting it to come right there, and then somebody jumps in front of them and takes it. Whereas some of these other guys understand that you've got to go attack the ball. You can't just wait for it because you have defenders that are attacking the ball. And if you wait for it, a lot of times they're going to beat you to it, whether it ends up in an incomplete pass or a pick. You've got to go attack the ball. And we didn't see that out of the young receiving core that Florida was playing with. And obviously, there's a lot of factors into looking good as a quarterback. There's first and foremost your offensive line. If you can't get protected, you're never going to be a decent quarterback because you can't sit there and take your time and make the throws you need to make. Secondly, if your receiving core isn't going and being aggressive and attacking the ball and they're not catching the ball and the routes aren't there and the chemistry is not there, it's hard to end up stacking up numbers and first downs and things like that. And then thirdly, you've got to get the run game going to be able to take pressure off of your offensive line when it comes to protecting you, because there's nothing more um, fun for a defensive line to know that it's a passing situation and I can rear back, cock it, and roll, and get after the quarterback. Um, but it'll be interesting to see. And you're right, Brakes. He was throwing to a practice way. He was throwing to the twos, and that's the whole point. Is like he's throwing to the second string, and that's what he's been doing all year. So
I do say
let's
this is a.
go ahead.
I was my last two saying is short. I feel like this Heisman finalist is one of the closer ones we've seen lately. All four, even if you want to count, I know Harris got dubbed out of it. All four of them have put up performances that I think in my mind could deserve it. But at the end of the day, I think Devontae Smith has edged over because we just haven't seen a receiver put these types of stats up over easily almost 30 years. But to talk about it, if Mac Jones wins, he'll become the first Alabama quarterback to win the Heisman. Trevor Lawrence would be the first Clemson player to win the Heisman. Kyle Trask would be the fourth quarterback to win the Heisman for Florida, and Devontae Smith would just become just the fourth receiver to win the Heisman. And that's for him. You put your name with the last two was Desmond Howard and Tim Brown. Those are some good some good receivers that torched the college scene. So have your name with
No,
them too.
absolutely.
They're pretty good. It was really good. I mean,
Well, and I agree. And Branks, we're gonna get to it right now. Let me ask you this, Matt. What is your winner and final score here on the 11th when Alabama and Ohio State meet up in Miami? What's your final score?
so I'm going with my heart on this one. I went with it last week, and I think you picked. I want to say you picked Clemson. I want to say, but we didn't put it down, so I don't know. So I'm going with Ohio State. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be in these. It's going to be in Mac Jones and Justin Fields' hands, and I just trust Justin Fields more to be able to, when they need it, be able to come out with it. Calling a shootout. I'm going to say 48-45 Ohio State.
I think it's gonna. I did say Clemson last week. I underestimated the amount that Ohio State was going to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence and shut down the run game of um, Clemson. But I think that Alabama just has too many weapons. I think that obviously, like you said, with your prediction, points are going to be scored. I'm curious if Ohio State can continue running the ball the way they have in the last couple games against a much better defense than they've been facing here recently. Um, but at the same time, that front four from Ohio State is impressive. And if they can slow Najee Harris down in the run game and then get pressure on Mac Jones, then they do have a good chance of winning this. But my gut instinct just tells me that with Alabama having as many national championships as they do, and me saying that this is the best Alabama team that I've ever seen, I cannot not pick them. I got to go with Alabama, and I'm actually going to say that we're going to see over 50 points scored. We're going to have over 100 points scored in this game. I'm going to say it's going to end up being 55-48 Alabama. I think there's going to be just an absolute um, offensive entourage of points, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to see. I think it's going to be a national championship game for the ages to come, and one that will always be remembered. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of the NFL. All right, so obviously we got Week 17 this week, where um, we got to playoff spots are still being fought for, and then that very crucial bye. Now that it's only one team that's going to be getting a bye, got a lot of things happening. Let's start off in the NFC. Um, First off, we got the Saints going against the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the Panthers coming off that win against Washington to force Washington to have to play this week for their playoff hopes. The Saints still have a chance at the number one seed, but to do it, they need the Packers to lose and Seattle to lose. So if the Packers lose and Seattle loses, then they end up taking that number one seed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter unless they win this game. Now, obviously, they already had the NFC South locked in. All right, Tampa Bay is not going to be able to um, come back to share into that. What are your thoughts of this game? I mean, obviously, the Saints are going to be missing almost all their running backs. Kamara's out, Murray's out, Washington's out, their fullback Burton's out.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, Carolina's also missing some running backs. McCaffrey's out and Davis is out. So I expect we don't know how much both teams are going to rely on their running game. They signed under the Saints picked is taking Ty Montgomery from their practice squad, who is a receiver slash kind of like a running back. So he has carried the ball. So I don't know how much they're going to focus him. But to me, we're just gonna be. It's gonna be a Harris or Drew Brees versus Teddy Bridgewater. And it's kind of like Teddy Bridgewater's on the other side. It's like, hey, you could have had me, maybe your quarterback, and just said Brees. It's like we love what you did, but we're gonna move on. But I'm looking at this Drew Brees versus Panthers defense. Last 2 weeks defensively, they have improved. Now I know it was this against Haskins. The first one last week, they did force 2 interception and forced them to have a quarterback rating at 36.9. But when they played Aaron Rodgers, they only let Rodgers throw for 133. So the pass defense for the Carolina Panthers has been stellar the last 2 weeks. But with the Saints,
And why is that? Why is that? Why is that?
because the off defensive rookie year candidate.
Because you're going with Jeremy Chin. I'm going with Brian Burns and company. I'm going with the pass rush. You're talking to a D-line coach right here, son. I'm talking about this freaking pass rush has been on point. They have been getting after it. When you're hitting the quarterback, you're forcing quarterbacks to make dumb decisions. And
I
don't get me
do.
wrong, Jeremy Chin has been playing lights
Mhm.
out this season. That boy, like, if he doesn't win the Defensive Rookie of the Year, then it's rigged, and I don't understand what's going on. I don't care if they only do get 5 wins on the entire year. Jeremy Chin should be the Rookie of the Year 100% when it comes to the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year. But what made Josh Norman so great when he was with the Carolina Panthers? The fact that he had the best front seven in the league in front of him. And it makes it pretty easy when you're a corner, when you're getting a bunch of just ducks flying up there in the sky that you can pick out all the time. But
Mhm.
I think it's been that front that's been the difference for Panthers over the last couple weeks.
I also want to see. I'm trying to look up the inactives. The Saints haven't announced they're inactive. We know they're missing some receivers also. Um, so I wanted to see who was going to be playing because it's going to be a Law and Breeze because we're going to see no running game. You're going to see Breeze maybe come out. You might see a bunch of different packages with Chase and Hill to just try to get a running going. I think this matchup with the running game being the question fares better for the Panthers to the point where the both defenses honestly thinking about it the Panthers
They have a
struggled.
couple questionables
Mhm.
up on the front.
The Panthers have struggled against slowing down run defense. So I feel like this favors
And
them, but also favors for the Saints. They, I would say, are a top 3 rush defense, pass rush. They last week I think got 4 sacks, and before that, when they were going on their not tear, they were leading the league against the sacks during those weeks.
uh,
So for Carolina, if they're not able to run the ball, it should be bad for Teddy if they're not able to protect him.
well, let me go to the other side. I'm going to answer Branks' question here. And Amos, appreciate you joining in with us as well. Appreciate you commenting on here. Here's my thought on this process, right? The Saints don't have hardly any running backs that have been doing it for him all year long. And obviously, like we were just talking about in the national championship game, if you can't run the ball, it makes it difficult as a quarterback. And just like you were saying, if they can't run the ball, now you're putting a lot more pressure on Teddy Bridgewater. And under the circumstances, 9 times out of 10, I would say you don't have a running game. You're gonna really struggle as a quarterback. Here's the exception: Drew Brees. You're talking about one of the best to ever get under center. If you look at the top quarterbacks in my mind right now, my top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL in order are Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Patrick Mahomes. All 3 Super Bowl winners, all 3 Super Bowl MVPs. It's just a matter of him doing it for so long, understanding the game, being such a student of the game, and the way that he commands and leads is just downright impressive. Now, obviously, we saw that the Saints beat the Panthers early in the year 27-24. And we know the Panthers, when it comes to divisional matchups, teams step up. So the Panthers will obviously be stepping up in this game to make it a game. I think that it'll be more difficult for the Saints not having a running game, but I can't ever overlook the fact that you got Drew Brees and who he's throwing the ball to with Michael Thomas and
Well,
company
he
and
won't
Sanders.
have Michael Thomas because Michael Thomas is on IR with that ankle.
I thought he came back. I thought
Mm-mm.
he's back.
He's not. He's ineligible to come back until playoffs.
Okay. But you still have Drew Brees back there under center, and
Yeah.
that's gonna be impressive to see. I think Taysom Hill will probably end up taking some snaps back there at running back. We've seen him
I
obviously.
expect a lot more Taysom Hill this week, just to help out with that running game, though.
Absolutely. Um, and so it'll be interesting to see how this works out. I mean, it's really going to be a big stress on Drew Brees, because he does have to play lights out. I mean, the thing is, though, if I'm a bet man, I'm not betting against Drew Brees when it comes down to that. Now, you're right, Matt. The Panthers defense has been playing a lot better here of late, especially the last couple of weeks. But the Saints defense has been playing a lot better this last half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing is, like you said, you have the number 3 rush defense in the league. they've really been stepping it up here recently. And if Carolina, the Saints have more ability to do bigger things without people than the Panthers do right now, because the Panthers have Teddy Bridgewater, who's been playing solid, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and then after that, you've taken away all your weapons on offense that's playing. And then you got an offensive line that's really been struggling this year. Teddy, just being mobile, has been able to do some things with his feet. We have a defense that is extremely young and has made a lot of big mistakes. Now, obviously, now that they've got a lot of game experience, they've been getting better along the way. Brian Burns has been a big part of that, being able to get pressure on the quarterback, because anytime you can do that, it's going to take pressure off of your other players around and make it easier on the secondary. And that's where they really struggled early on. It was obviously they can't, like, people are just running through the middle of the defense. And they struggle without having Jeremy Chin in the lineup because of his ability to come down, add in as another linebacker within that defense. But this matchup does play a little bit more in favor of the Panthers, because their biggest bigaboo that they've had all year long is stopping the run. And now you don't expect the Saints to be able to run a whole lot, but they still can. That offensive line is still pretty remarkable and still has a good chance of gaining some yards, but it's just hard not to trust Drew Brees and what he can do, especially with his history.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was saying. It's going to come down to the. I want to say the front. I'm going to say the front four, because, like you were talking about earlier at the beginning, the Panthers' front four has been the difference the last 2 weeks. The Saints' front four, you could definitely even say it is one of the best in the NFL this year. So it's going to be whose front four can be the most disrupting, is going to make the biggest impact.
Absolutely. And Matt, do you want to answer Amos's question here on Facebook?
Which one about any free agent signings with the team?
Yep. Oh, from the practice squad for the Saints.
I think the biggest and the most impacted is the one I mentioned earlier for the Saints, T.Y. Montgomery, him being signed from the practice squad, because he's going to be their star running back going into this game they were announced, and he's more of a receiver. He's kind of like the Patterson from the Bears. He's more of a receiver, but he has had run it. He does run the ball once in a while. So that's the most notable that you'll see today, just because he was announced as starting running back for this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. I mean, he's been around the league for a while, but obviously hasn't done too much. I mean, he was with the Packers there for a good little bit before bouncing around with the Ravens and Jets, but he's going to get an opportunity. Been in the league for a little bit. He's going to get an opportunity to show why he belongs and possibly earn him a job. So he's going to be motivated, very similar to like Mike Davis was motivated when Christian McCaffrey was out. So it is going to be interesting to see how Tom Montgomery holds up with this, and how the Panthers defense holds up with him and Drew Brees. So let's go ahead on to the next game. You got the Packers fighting for a number 1 seed right here, going against the Bears at 8-7. The Packers and Bears games are always classics, and always love to see these games being played, especially this one's going to be in Soldier Field. Would love to be able to. Like I said, I've always loved this matchup. What do you think, Matt? Knowing that the Packers need a win to clinch number 1 seed, and the Bears still have a chance to end up making the postseason here. They need a little bit of help, but if the Bears beat Green Bay, then they're in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. If they lose, then they need the Cardinals to lose to the Rams.
Yep.
But they still have a good chance. So the Bears are fighting for their playoff hope. They're fighting just to make it to the dance. The Packers are already in the dance. They're fighting for homecoming king. And so I think we're going to see a lot of heart on both sides, which I always love, which sometimes you miss out on in professional sports. That can be lost if you're not already in the playoffs, which is always a big disappointment for me. But at the same time, I'm curious how Trubinsky steps up in this moment. There's always been a lot of question on whether he's deserving of the number 2 overall pick when he was picked there a couple years ago. And then obviously they bring in Nick Foles as a chance to try to replace him, and then he goes down. We've seen what Trubinsky's done since then. I'm really curious to see how he plays in this game because I think this is going to be a defining game for Trubisky and the Chicago Bears moving forward over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say this is one of my one of my top games this week to watch, just because both of these teams are trending in the right direction. Um, this is both these this game's definitely important for both of them. More important for the Bears because they're fighting for their playoff lives. The Packers, even though they do lose this game, they still have a chance to lock in the number 1 spot with some help. But saying that, I heard on NFL Live, and I agree with it. Mitchell, let's say this: Mitchell has played really good since being taken over the starting position. The offense actually has played statistically better and been better within the lineup over Nick Foles. But he's fighting for his job. For Nick Foles, this is the game to prove that, hey, I am your starting quarterback going forward. Because we talked about how bad Mitchell has looked. I don't have the statistics in front of me. I might be able to pull it up when I'm talking. But Mitchell Trubisky, he actually has a pretty good record, win-loss record, as the starter Bears. So for me, this game, he can show himself that, hey, I can be your future guy. Now, talking about the game, David Montgomery on the Bears side has played lights out great in this last 5 games. He's rushed over 90 yards in the last 4
And
to
that's been a
5
big
games.
difference
It
than
has.
running the ball.
And that you know what game that a team that started against the Packers.
Hmm?
And I can't remember. And for Mitchell, he has thrown 4 straight games of a quarterback rating of over 95. So he's been able to take care of the ball, and he's been not the issue. And that's the biggest thing. He hasn't been the issue. So for me, when I look at this, what the biggest thing we see in this team, these matchup last time, the Bears was not able to, or the Packers running the ball. The Packers was able to run the ball and throw the ball against this Bears defense. They ran 163 yards against the Bears last time they get in a match. This Bear defense, you got to take that as disrespected. Like, you are a fierce defense still in this league, and this is your time to shine. Mitchell has to be great, but this defense needs to show up because last time they went out, they didn't show up. So for me, it's I put Mitchell Trubisky has to play. He doesn't have to play lights out. The defense has to do what they need to do. Mitchell just needs to take care of the ball for me.
No, absolutely. And Amos, I agree with you. I don't ever think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the issue when it comes with how seriously that you end up taking a game. And it's not necessarily him that I'm thinking of. A lot of times when you get younger players that are inexperienced and don't necessarily see the importance of it, or it becomes a drag. I mean, even in college football where we're only playing 10 to 11 games, you see that drag throughout the season. You see a lot of young players start to fall off, and they don't even realize that they are falling off because they're mentally not there. And Green Bay has a lot of young players on defense, and that's who I'm most concerned about when it comes to them locking up this number 1 seed. Let me talk about the Bears defense real quick since you had that up. The Bears defense has not been great this year by any stretch of the word. But here's what they have done. They've limited explosive plays. They forced you to drive on them. Now, granted, people have driven on them, but their issue is being able to stop the run. Their strength is in when you try to get pass because they have a phenomenal pass rush, and it all starts with Khalil Mack and what he's able to do off the edge. But they have other weapons in there, and when you get a great edge rusher with the interior pressure that they do get, then it makes things difficult for quarterbacks. And now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers has been sacked. I think it's 8 times in the last 2 weeks since their starting left tackle, all Pro Bowler, went down. They've given up more sacks in the last 2 weeks than they did in the first half of the season. And so, how much of that is going to be an issue for Aaron Rodgers? They have to be able to run the ball. They have to be able to take some pressure off of them, like we've talked about. But I do think this is, like you said, I think this is more of a game for the Bears defense to step up. Trubinsky needs to make sure he doesn't turn the ball over. Just move the ball down the field, be smart with it, and then don't take unnecessary shots. Because if you keep it a tight game, I think your defense gives you the best chance to win. If you turn it into if the defense is getting smoked, or if you're turning the ball over on offense and you try to turn this thing into a shootout, Aaron Rodgers will light you up like a firework on the 4th of July. He will burn you with Devontae Adams and company. It will not be fun at all for anybody in that stadium that's not wearing green and yellow. And so you've got to, as a defense, not it's almost impossible to stop Aaron Rodgers, but you've got to get pressure on him. You've got to slow him down. You've got to stop the run game and force him to have to take a lot of dropbacks so you can get teeing off on him. You've got to get shots on him. You've got to get him flustered. You've got to get him frustrated. And so I think that this is a game for the Bears defense to go out and win. This is a game for the Bears offense to not lose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, you can't be so conservative you don't go out there and play the game. But at the same time, I think it's down to them to be able to. I think it comes down to the defense more so than I do this offense in Trubisky. Even though I still stick with my previous comment, this is the kind of scenarios that Trubisky needs to be able to prove that he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. You don't need to go out and win the game, but you cannot be the reason you lose it.
Yeah, and the two stats I put out and I talked about the last time they played, and a lot of times I don't go back to the last time they played, but this is very recent. It's not like a week 2 or week 3 matched up. The two biggest things that stood out to me: Packers were able to run the 163 yards on this Bears defense, and that opened up the pass. And Mitchell threw 3 interceptions. So, like I said, those are good, like you two. Those are going to be the two stats I'm looking at. Because if Mitchell's throwing an interception or any turning the ball over, it's going to be ugly. If the Bears can't stop the Packers' run, you're not going to stop Aaron Rodgers with that running of being a threat.
No, absolutely not. So let's go ahead. We're going to continue here in the NFC, and then take a little break for the NFC because I will talk about the AFC after this. But we can't go without the day without talking about the Seattle Seahawks and their position to end up attacking for a number 1 seed. You obviously, like we talked about, the Packers win and they're in, right? Well, for the other number 1 seed, if the Packers lose, okay, then Seattle and the Saints are both fighting for that number 1 seed. So if the Saints lose to the Panthers and the Packers lose to the the Bears, Seattle has a chance of taking that number 1 seed, and they're fired up after winning the NFC West last week. Now, obviously, they've got the 49ers that they're having to go to. They're still playing in Arizona, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're going to be there in Arizona fighting for this game. Rosen, who was just signed, was announced to be the backup. I think it'll be interesting to see if Josh Rosen ends up coming into the game. I'd like to see him just because, see what he can do here. But what are your thoughts on this game? What do the 49ers? I think the bigger question is, what do the 49ers need to do to be able to win this game?
Well, I would say this before I get into it. The 49ers are playing the spoilers because we already seen they might spoil Arizona this season if Arizona doesn't come out with a win. So, or Chicago wins. But the 49ers are getting healthy, and we're seeing a team that defensively they might be able to keep up with Seattle. Now, one thing the 49ers will have to do, they're going to have to throw the ball. Now, Jeff Wilson ran for 183 against Arizona, and that was, I mean, I wasn't expecting it, but from a Kyle Shanahan's offense, it just seems like you plug a running back in there, you're going to be able to run the ball. But Seattle comes in fifth best against the rush. But for me, the 49ers is going to come down to the 49ers veteran is going to have to be able to throw the ball against Seattle because they still struggle as a pass. They still are putting up allowing a lot of pass defense, not recently. But for me, Seattle's defense, they have been getting after it. One of the question marks for Seattle that was hurting their defense was they weren't able to put pressure on.
I think Jamal Adams heard me talking crap about him
Well, Dunlap was also
because
a
that
big
boy
thing.
went off.
Dunlap, his addition has been huge.
Oh yeah, no, Carlos Dunlap has been absolutely
And
monstrous.
last week they torched. They were getting after Jared Goff and making his nightmare will end up breaking his thumb off him smacking off Seattle's helmet. So for me, Seattle, you just come out and play your game offensively, not turn the ball over. For San Francisco, you got to get this run game going. It's going to be hard, but you got to be able. If you are not going to be able to run this game, I don't see Betterman be able to outgun Wilson.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, obviously the run game's huge. I think the other thing that you didn't mention was George Kittle coming back last week. That was absolutely huge to be able to help him to have a very reliable target that can go over the middle, that can catch the short balls, that can go deep, that gives you a big target that you know has strong hands and will go and fight for the ball. And so you don't have to be perfect, and he's still going to give you a chance. Now, granted, he only had 4 catches, but those 4 catches for 92 yards, they were big time catches. And so I think that right there is going to help them. I think that the 49ers are really going to struggle. They seem to do better when Richard Sherman's on the field, even though Richard Sherman hasn't been the player of old. They do better when he's out there. He's going to be out this week. And so that's going to be interesting. What's going to happen with DK Metcalf out there? I think that you got to be able to take him away. And when he doesn't play well, Russell Wilson struggles. He really struggles. You have Greg Olsen that's going to be out this game. And so I think that if you take away DK Metcalf, the Seahawks haven't been able to run the ball the way they want to. Now, I know they've had injuries and some other things, but they haven't been able to run the ball the way they've wanted to. Limit DK Metcalf and make it hard on Russell Wilson, and I think you stand a chance. You know, it's interesting. The last 2 home games for the 49ers in this matchup, now I know this is a different situation, but the last 2 times that these teams have played when the 49ers were the home team, 49ers lost both of them in overtime. So it shows you how tight these games have been, how close that they want to, how close they are to battle. But, you know, it's going to be a tough matchup for the 49ers, but like
I
you
do
said,
say this.
they're getting healthy. They're playing a little bit better, and
Oh,
um,
I do say this. Out of all the teams in the NFL, if you're comparing them, the team that I would put number one that if they missed their starting quarterback, that scares me. That could go out there and just win no matter who's in their quarterback spot almost. It's the 49ers. And that showed how they got in the Super Bowl last year. This team, whatever quarterback has stepped up, and there's been Molden's, Bethard, and then Garoppolo, Jimmy G. It's just like
Garoppolo.
This team, they're gonna be scary next year when they get healthy. I have to say that, but yeah, it's just scary. It's not an easy win. If Jimmy G is not in there, the starting quarterback, it's still not gonna be easy win. So
Never is. um, so let me ask you this: what are your thoughts for Seattle to win this game? What do they need to do?
They need to stop the run, force San Fran. Sorry. The Arizona 49ers needs to force them to throw the ball and be able to get their front four plus I would say their front four plus Adams to be able to pressure and let Beather beat them. Because at the end of the day, I know you talked about DK when he struggles, Russell struggles. For me, defensively, they do have Carlos Hyde and I can't think. They do have their two running backs. I want to say that. Offensively, I think they'll be able to do what they need to do. For me, if they can prevent the rush defense, uh, they will be able to strangle this offense for the 49ers. So no matter even if they are struggling themselves on offensively, I feel like Seattle's offense will be able to at least outscore San Francisco.
So let's go on to the AFC now. All right. So let's flip gears a little bit. We'll come back to the NFC here in a minute. But let's flip gears. You have the Dolphins versus the Bills. All right. Obviously, Kansas City's already locked up the number one seed, so that's not entirely nobody's fighting for that. Obviously, the Bills locked up the NFC East for the first time since 1995, and with Kelly back there at quarterback. Let me ask you this: the Dolphins are a win and in scenario. Win and in scenario. What are we going to see from not only Tua, who has been playing lights out this year since he got the starting job, other than when Trubisky had to come in and finish things up for him, but this defense has been the most impressive thing for me. The way that this Dolphins defense has been playing recently, especially the secondary, has been game changing. So the Dolphins win and they're in. Matt, what do the Dolphins need to do today
Well,
to get to the playoffs?
I have three players that I put down that gonna have to make a impact for them. And my first one is the most important because, like you said, NFL, the quarterback is the most important player on the team. Although this team sport, we all know quarterbacks is the most player. And I'm looking at Tua. Tua, he has to step up because for the last 2 weeks he's been pulled from the game because the offense been stale, and we all know Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Magic Man, has to come in. Well, this week Magic Man can't come in because he tested positive and he is out of this game. So there's no Magic Man for Tua. Tua needs to show, and this has to go. He's like, hey, I'm your man. You don't need to bring in Magic Man. I'm going to bring the magic. I'm going to put my team on the back and get us to the playoffs because we know if they don't lose, there's going to be question marks next year about, hey, is Tua ready to be the starter? Do we go with Ryan Fitzpatrick? So it's like a lot of question marks because Tua this year, like you said, he's played good, Brian. Boy, guess what? He has 3 games this year where he's passed under 100 yards. That's not good. so
No,
he
not
has,
at all.
he. So I'm looking at him. Next person, I'm looking at Miles Gashin. He had a great game last week. Had 5 catches for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns out of the backfield catching, and he also ran the ball for 87 yards with 6.2 yards per carry. He's going to be a guy that's going to be he's going to be the person that's going to help Tua. I think if he's able to have these statistic yards running the ball and be able to catch the ball for a blanket, he's going to help Tua out, and he'll have to be able to do this against this Buffalo team because for Buffalo, you just need multiple weapons, I feel like. You can't become a one dimension. And the next person I would say would be Xavier Howard. He's leading the league with interceptions with 9, only allowing 48.5 quarterback rating when the quarterbacks end up deciding, hey, let's throw to Howard. He's not doing that well this year. Howard's going to have to stick up because we know how big Siobhan Diggs is. He is Allen's safety blanket, and Howard will have to be able to show that, hey, I'm a top corner in the NFL this year. I'm going to be the shutdown corner and I'm going to be able to take away your safety blanket because looking at the inactive, Cole Beasley's going to be out. So with Cole Beasley being out, his second favorite player, if Howard had been able to shut down Diggs, it's going to be very hard on Buffalo's offense.
No, absolutely. And I think that the other thing that's not being talked about right now is the Dolphins could be without Shaq Lawson, which could be a huge loss for them up front. In the sense of stopping the run and getting after him. He's questionable. He could end up playing.
Yeah. Right now,
Um,
he is not on the inactive list, but like I said, that's still he can
but he's
still
a
be
game time
active.
decision.
Yeah, he can
Yeah,
still
he's a
be
game
active.
time decision. So he'll come out, warm up, and
Mm-hmm.
depending on how he feels today and how he's moving around. But you got to think that with the scenario they're in, he's probably going to end up playing.
Mm-hmm.
But how much can he do? Where his limitations going to be? I know it's an ankle injury, and that can always greatly affect you at any position in the NFL. So how does that greatly affect him? But I agree with your point. I mean, this is really a chance for a lot of these guys in Miami to show that Miami's here to stick around. They have turned this around, and it has been absolutely impressive to watch them play this season and what they've been able to do and the work that Brian Flores has been able to do with Miami. He's been extremely impressive and hope to see them continue to flourish because I love him as a coach and love what he's been able to do. But obviously, you see you see the defense that he's put together here, and it's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, you're talking about Josh Allen, who is having an MVP caliber season. There's talks whether he should be. I think that right now, if you look, the top three MVP candidates are Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. And it'll be what Josh Allen's doing with the Bills and Sean McVay has done with the Bills has been equally as impressive as what Brian Flores has done, but they've just done it in a different way. And I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a good one. But can you slow down Stephon Diggs and take away Josh Allen's number one receiver? So let's keep on rolling here. Let's stick with another NFC matchup. This time, let's go to the NFC North. We got the Steelers versus the Browns. All right, always a great matchup. One of the best rivalries in sports when the Browns actually have a chance of winning, which they do. And you have the Steelers at 12-5, the Browns at 10-5. The Steelers have already locked up the AFC North. Now the Browns win and they're in. They win and they're in. Now there are some other things that can happen to get them in. If they end up losing, then they need the Colts to lose. And if the Colts end up winning, then they need the Titans to lose, plus the Ravens and Dolphins to win. Um, and so, and the Dolphins are kind of in the situation. You got the Ravens, the Browns, and the Colts, kind of all in the and the Colts, all kind of in this same little jumbled mismatch here for fighting for these last two spots here. Two of them will get in, one won't. And so right now the Browns once again are in a win and in scenario. What are your keys to victory for the Browns against this extremely impressive Steelers defense?
Well, I see John just posted the Browns made Miles Garrett a captain. I did see that. Charlie actually messaged me that, and I thought that was funny. Just because there is no Big Ben. Big Ben's out for the game. Since they locked in the bye in the division, they decided to rest him. And it's a smart move because I've been talking to some people. I think Big Ben, minus actually last week, before last week's game, I thought he was playing hurt. I think he's hurt a little with that elbow, so he needs that extended rest for next week for the wild card. But for me, this offense finally got out of their slide. They were sliding and it just didn't look good last week against the Colts. It looked like their offense was back on track. Now I'm wanted to see because we've seen what Mason Rudolph looked last year. They struggled. They are just a barely 8-8 team. So how does Mason Rudolph looks with a run attack that we know that is last
Worst
in
in the
the
league.
league?
Worst in the
Last in
league.
the league.
The
Now,
Steelers have the worst running attack in the league, and they're playing the second best running offense in the league. You talk about time of possession being huge, time of possession being huge. Go ahead, finish.
but on the other side, the Browns, we know they had the receivers that were out. But the thing that shocked me the most was the Browns' defense struggled against the Jets. Their defense of secondary got just struggled. So I want to see. It's like I know the Browns are going to bounce back. They're going to be a lot into this game because of the Mason Rudolph and Miles Garrett incident of last year, of the last game of the season. So I want to see that. Baker did not have a good time against his defense. He was 1 for
People don't. It's
19,
okay.
1 touchdown, 2 picks. That was week 7. But for the Browns offensively, they only ran the ball 18 times against the Jets. I expect them to run 30, just because we all know about the Steelers' defense. The Steelers' defense allowed the Colts to run for 120 on them last week. So for the Browns, they're going to have to get back to what they're good at. They can't run the ball for only 18 times. They're going to, for me, I expect 30 runs, and I expect the Browns, because they do have the receivers to come back this week, I expect the Browns to bounce back. And the biggest thing for me would be Baker Mayfield for this Pittsburgh defense.
So I want to talk about the Browns defense for a second. The Browns defense has been pretty solid at stopping the run. They've been right there around 10, 15 in the league. So, I mean, middle of the pack and on the right side of things. They've also been in that same position when it comes to getting after the quarterback. Games that they struggled are games they haven't got to the quarterback. They can stop the run, but then the quarterback gets all day to sit back there and be able to sling it around. And when you see that the Browns' opponents have time in the pocket, they get beat. And they get beat by a very good, very poor secondary in Cleveland. And so if Cleveland's going to win this game, they obviously have to force the Steelers to throw it, because you don't want the worst rushing um, offense to be able to run the ball on you. So you've got to be able to hold them up there. But at the same time, right, you've got to get pressure on the quarterback. Because if you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, then your secondary is going to get exposed. Now, on the flip side, with the Steelers, you're talking about the best team in the league when it comes to getting after the quarterback. It's what they do. They do it extremely well. Well, luckily for the Browns, they run the ball. Unlucky for the Browns, the Steelers are also a top 10 team in stopping the run. And so the Browns are going to have to. They're going to have to wear down clock. I'm not saying that they necessarily need to stack up a lot of yards against on the run game. That is going to be have to have them move the ball. Baker Mayfield isn't going to have a phenomenal game. Just don't turn it over. Here's what you need to do. You need to win time of possession, and you keep it a close game, and you force Mason Rudolph to go down and beat you at the end of the game. I will take Mason Rudolph trying to beat me at the end of the game every day of the week than allowing myself to get out of what I do, which is run the ball. If the Browns need to run the ball, eat up clock. They just need to try to get this thing into the fourth quarter to give themselves a chance to win. Force Mason Rudolph to come in and end up beating you, because we all know the Steelers defense is probably the best defense in the league right now. And you know how I feel about the Rams, especially. And some of these other defenses out there, and the way the Saints have been playing, the Bucks have been playing, and all these other defenses. But the Steelers are by, like, no doubt in my mind, the best defense in the league right now.
Well, I do say one thing will help the Browns. When I was looking at the inactives before I talked, I just totally didn't look at the Steelers, and there's 2 names that stick out to me. that I didn't know that was going to be inactive. Cameron Haywood and T.J. Watt are out, and we already
Yes.
know Bud Dupree is also out for the season. So that
So
is
all that
huge for the
should help.
Browns.
It all falls into the Browns. Like the Browns are set up to
Have a
make the
good.
playoffs for the first time since 2007,
I would say this.
2009.
People were
They
talking about that this is a great season for I've heard people say if the Browns don't make the playoffs, it's still a great season for them because like it's this hard. It's like although they lost, their organization in recent past that does not have success in winning, and it's like, hey man, they're an organization that's finally starting to learn how to win. But for me, if you lose, if you don't make the playoffs, and the reason is because you just lost to the 2-14 or 2-13 Jets, and then you get lost to a Mason Rudolph that has no run attack, and we just said this defense and the defense is missing their front seven is crippled. That's not going to be good.
No, not at all. And especially we've seen the coaching carousel that have gone on with the with the with the Browns, and
Yeah.
it's extremely difficult to win with the Browns because nobody can stay with the Browns long enough to give a chance. And I take back my point. The last time they had a winning season was in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
The last time
You
they
know
made the
who's the starter
playoffs was
back?
in 2002.
I got a quiz for. Do you know who was the starting quarterback for that 07?
Yeah, it was the cat that was the backup for the Panthers, Anderson.
Yeah, Derek Anderson.
Oh yeah, Derek Anderson. Um, but the last time they made the playoffs was in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so for the first time in 18 years, you're going to be able to see the Browns really, truly fighting for another position to make the playoffs here. It'll be interesting to see how they end up going. This is only the third winning season they've had since they came back as an organization after moving to Baltimore. Things are set up for Cleveland to make the playoffs.
It's
I
like what
think they're
John says.
hungry. I think they're aggressive. I think they're ready to go. Things are set up in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Can they take advantage of it?
John put in so Cleveland is being handed the playoffs if they don't Browns or if they don't Brown it. Mostly Browns it up. It's true. I was
Yeah.
like, they gave him his thing. Hey, you want your playoff? We'll give you the Jets.
Here
and
it
we'll
is.
give you a Steelers team with no starters. Go get it.
You're going to play the best defense in football without our top three players. You're going to play one of the worst offenses in football without their starting quarterback. They're handing them a gift in the playoffs, but you know what?
Apparently,
If
the Jets
anybody
wasn't
can
worth
brown
it.
it up, it's going to be freaking Cleveland.
Oh.
All right.
If they end up losing and get knocked out of the playoff, Jim Brown's leaving. Jim Brown's is gonna. You won't hear Jim Brown in the Browns anymore. He'll be in it.
Yeah, you. All right. Well, let's keep rolling. All right, so we were talking about the number 2 rush offense in the league. Let's go to the number 1 rush offense in the league, led by a quarterback in Lamar Action Jackson. All right, at the 10-5 Ravens going into the 4-10-1 Bengals, who are also feeling pretty high and mighty right now. All right, and once again, the Ravens are the third team in this whole deal where it's a win and you're in. Win and you're in scenario. Let's be quick with this game because I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about.
Oh, I'm quick with it.
Go ahead.
I'm about to be disrespectful, and this is probably the first time you heard it. Bengals, your 2-game winning streak is nice, but the Ravens' offense is starting to look like what we've seen in the first half of the season and what we've seen last year. Jackson is back. Action Jack is back. That's where I should say it.
Jackson.
There's one stat that stood out with me, and I'm just going to say it, and that's going to be it. Bengals, you've had your run of good, but you're getting knocked off, and the Ravens getting in the playoffs, I think.
And Amos, I agree with you 100%. The Ravens will make to look quick work of them.
Yes. The Ravens defense sacked Daniel Jones 6 times and hit him 11 times. Now, when the Ravens and
I don't care who it is. I love quarterback hits.
Now, when the Ravens and Bengals played in Week 5, Brian, you ready? This is even worse.
Bring it. Give
They
it to me.
sacked Joe Burrow 7 times and hit him 15 times. This is going to get ugly because this Ravens team is playing like the Super Bowl contenders that people thought they were.
Let me give you the word you're looking for, Matt. This Ravens team is playing pissed off.
Yes. Pissed
They
off
are
and-
pissed off. They are going to it. And I'll tell you the difference is that game they had against Cleveland. Since then, this looks like a different Baltimore team. This looks like the team that we expected to see at the beginning of the season with the league MVP taking over control. You know, they're healthy, they're rolling, they've got everybody back from all this COVID nonsense. They are ready to go. They are hitting it full stride. They have the number one rush offense in the league. They are in a playoff win you're in scenario. I think they'll make quick work of the Bengals, just like I'm going to make quick work of right now and go ahead and move on. So, AFC South. All right. You have the Titans and the Colts both at 10-5. All right. The Titans have the division tiebreaker. Right. So if both teams win, the Titans still take the division. All right. And then you end up getting 3 teams fighting for these spots over here with the Colts, the Browns, and the Ravens, all trying to figure out who's that next one in there, right? But if the Titans win and they're in, it's that simple. Another win and in scenario, they win, they get the AFC South, and they're in the top 4 seed, guaranteed a home game for the first round. If they lose, they need the Colts or the Dolphins to lose, right? So the Browns, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Dolphins are all fighting for 3 spots. One of those teams will not make it in. The Titans, however, have the best chance at making it in, followed by the Ravens. So, once again, I'm going to make quick work of this because I'm going to talk about the best back in the league right now in the Crimson Tide's Derrick Henry. All right. Going against a very bad Texan defense. Oh, they're so bad, and I hate to say it because you know my boy Keon's on that team, and I hate it. And don't worry, Amos. I appreciate you getting back. You didn't miss much other than us just trying to figure out how bad the Texans are going to get beat by the Titans in this run game. But I see that you see that the Texans, you got your money. So Amos right here says that he's putting his money on the Texans to upset the Titans, and because they're due for a big win. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing it. I'm a big fan of old Deshaun. You know, got my boy Keon over there playing defense for him, playing corner for him. Wouldn't mind seeing it. I just don't think that defense can slow down Derrick Henry and company.
Is me?
Guys, yeah.
Oh. I don't want to be mean when I burst Phillips's bubble, but it's like mine is short and sweet too because mine was even shorter than the Ravens and Baltimore game because how I see this one is, although we both have agree we love Deshaun Watson, I think he's a transcendent quarterback in this league. His GM/coach took his best receiver away, and then his next top receiver ends up getting suspended. He loses all of his weapons. I was still believing in him after you said no, I should have, but he just doesn't have the weapons around him to especially against Tennessee, who's playing well. And the biggest thing is the Texans are one of the worst team against the run. And what does
Yes, I was about to say they're the second worst team against the run after the Dallas Cowboys.
Want to run with Derrick Henry, MVP. By the way, MVP still count. I know people are saying that people think Rodgers has run away. Henry has put up MVP numbers, and what Titans want to do: run the ball, play action. And today they will have full effect today against the Texans.
Yeah, they're going to run the ball and shove it down the Texans' throat so deep that they're going to fill Derrick Henry in their esophagus. So let's go ahead and keep on rolling here. How about another little quick matchup talk, huh? Another little quick matchup talk. You got the Jaguars. All right, and here's what the Jaguars are fighting for. They're fighting for Trevor Lawrence. And so They're going against the Colts at 10-5.
They're not
The
fighting for them.
Colts.
They locked it with the Jets winning last week. They locked it.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the Jets can't even lose right. So here's the deal for the Colts. The Colts, to make the playoffs, are not in the win and in scenario that these other teams are. Dolphins win, they're in. Browns win, they're in. Ravens win, they're in. The Colts are on the short side of the stick. Okay? The Colts have to win to stand a chance. Have to. Okay? If the Titans lose, then they win the NFC South, which we just talked about. It's probably unlikely. The Colts win. They need Miami or Cleveland or Baltimore to lose to be able to stand a chance. So it's not as simple as them winning and then they're in. They need one of these other teams that we've talked about to lose. Now, I think we can both agree that their best chance of that is the Dolphins losing to the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got to take care of their own business right here. Obviously, we've seen a Colts defense that has been playing better, right? They were really good at the start. They kind of fell off a little bit in the middle there. They're playing a lot better. They're getting back into the defense we saw at the beginning. Are you worried about this Jaguars team upsetting the Colts?
Nope. I was going to say some stuff, and I'm looking at it. The more I look at this game, the more I'm thinking about it. The Steelers, the Ravens, and the Colts are kind of gimme games. The teams are like, hey, here's the playoffs. Do you want it? For me, this game has to be personal for the Colts. Because if you lose this game, no, not even to you say, hey, I lost to Jacksonville. Guess what? You got swept by Jacksonville because the only win Jacksonville had was week 1 against the Colts. That's all I have to say. You have a chance of losing your playoff hopes to a 2-14 Jacksonville team that just swept you. That's all the motivation that Colts need to have going into this game.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And I'm not going to spend
team kept you out of the playoffs because they beat you twice.
Because they beat you twice. I'm going to ask the chat here. Chat, go ahead while we're getting ready to go ahead and talk about this next division here, the worst division in football. Let me know. All right, let me know. We talked about this, right? Dolphins are winning in. They're playing the Bills. Browns are winning in. They're playing the Steelers. Ravens are winning in. They're playing the Bengals. Titans are winning in, and they're playing the Texans. Colts are winning. And then they need one of those other 3 teams to lose to be able to get into the playoffs. Go ahead, leave your comment in the chat. Tell us who you think is not making the playoffs. Who's not making the playoffs today because they can't get the job done. Now, let's go on to the favorite part of every single friggin' person on ESPN, Fox, CBS, and whatnot. Because everybody wants to get their rocks off for the Dallas Cowboys. And I can't figure it out. And it's frustrating and it's upsetting because I can't stand people talking about bad football teams like they're supposed to be good. They're not. But somehow they keep winning. And they're still in the conversation right now. So you have the Cowboys at 6-9 going against the Giants at 5-10. So let me give you this scenario, Matt. Let me give you this scenario here. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Washington, who we're going to talk about next, is obviously in a win and in scenario. They're winning it. They got it. Okay, because they win the NFC East. And then nobody in that team is making it to the wild card. But here's the crazy thing. The Eagles are the only ones that are eliminated. Because if Washington loses, the winner of this game wins the division.
Mm-hmm.
Because we will have a 3-way tie with the Giants having the tiebreaker.
I think it would be better interested if I know Washington has a 9:00 game. I'd been more interested if the Dallas and Giants had the 9:00 game because we would know that would be fault if the Washington end up losing 3 straight. Then we would be able to say, hey, this is for the division.
Exactly. And so this game, right, it doesn't guarantee you're winning in.
Mm-mm.
But it gives you the best opportunity. And Matt, I just want to talk about right now that we're talking about a 6-9 team versus a 5-10 team for a potential division championship right here. Because The Washington Redskins, who are playing the Eagles, who are already knocked out of the playoffs with 4 wins, still could lose this game. And it comes down to this one.
I put
Talk to me, Matt, talk to me about the Cowboys Giants game.
Before I get in it, I will say this: Shannon Sharp called it a couple weeks ago, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but I like the scenario now. I always said I wanted just Washington, like I said last week. I just want Washington. Although I wanted Carolina to win, I wanted Washington to win just to take Cowboys out of the playoffs. To say, hey, Washington wins, you're done. Shannon Sharp talked about it earlier a couple weeks. He wants this to come down to this week. And right when Cowboys says we have a chance, nope. And the rug gets pulled out of them again. Once again, they always break in their fans' heart. So now going into the actual game, this game matches up really well for the Cowboys, and the reason why, Andy Dalton just had his best game of the seasons against the Eagles. Last time we saw Andy versus the Giants, he came in to replace Dak, went for 9 for 11 for 111 yards, and had those 2 great plays for Mari to hit. For not Mari, sorry, for I can't think of his name. His name just slipped my head. But to set up the game-winning field goal. The Giants, it just looks like injuries has not been a friend for them near this end. They are 22nd in the pass defense, and they just allowed Ravens to run for almost 250 yards on them on the ground. So Andy Dalton threw for over 350 against the Eagles, who I think has a better defensive team than the Giants. And we just saw Zeke have his second 100th yard game last week. And I don't know about you, Brian. Zeke looked like his old self. I think it's because when he was out, Tony Paulo looked really good. And I think he got some words that, hey, your starting spot is starting to get, you might not be our starter next year. So Zeke kind of is looking like, hey, I got to play. I just got paid, but I might be the man out. So I'm looking at the Giants. Defensively, you're gonna have to stand or have to come big, because the Dallas offense lately has been able to become a two-handed monster, throwing the ball and running the ball. So my thing is for them, the Giants has to show up defensively, because Dallas has put up over 30 points a game offensively.
Well, so let me talk about the Giants real quick. What have the Giants done to be able to win the games they've won? What have they done well? They've ran the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the worst run defense in the league? The Dallas Cowboys. They can't freaking stop a dripping sink. They can't even put a bucket underneath to be able to keep it contained a little bit. And so if the Giants can just run the ball, I think they win this game. So here's where I think some of the issues come into play. The Giants are second in the league in giving up the most sacks. Cowboys are middle of the pack into actually sacking the quarterback. The Giants' strengths up to this point has been their defense. So the Giants need to be able to run better than the Cowboys. I'm not going to say they need to stop Zeke Elliott. I'm not going to say they need to contain them. They need to run better. And when you run better, you obviously hold on to the ball longer. So you need to have more time of possession. You need to have a higher time of possession here. You need to be able to run the clock and then force Andy Dalton to be able to try to do something at the end, even though you better get 2 scores up on him, because I'm going to trust him. Is Jones playing this game?
Of who? Yeah, he is.
Okay. So that gives the Giants a great opportunity there too, if they can keep him upright. But the Giants have to be able to get pressure on Andy Dalton. They've shown that they can get after the quarterback many times, but it all starts with forcing them to get into a situation where they have to throw the ball, because I don't think the Cowboys want to throw the ball. They want to run it. They want to run it, even though they have some weapons out there on the outside, and Andy Dalton's still a very good quarterback. But I think it's going to come down to the Giants' running ability, running attack on the Cowboys. If the Giants can run the ball, they win this game.
Hmm.
If they can't, or if the Cowboys run the ball better, they lose.
And thank you for chatting. Yeah, it was Michael Gallup who I was thinking about earlier, and he has been a favorite target. One thing I didn't get to say it, but I do say I agree when you were saying that the Giants has to run the ball, and I put that in my notes about Dallas has allowed 161.1 yards. But the Giants last week, what was the main reason they lost? They only ran the ball 12 times for 54 yards. So
And I
I
agree
can
with
read
you.
that too.
I agree with you, Amos. I think Andy Dalton's still a starting quarterback or has the ability to be. So quickly, Matt, let's go into this Washington Eagles game. Obviously, Washington's dropped the last couple games, but it has not been because of their defense. Their defense has still been outstanding in the front. It's obviously been with the issues they've had at quarterback more than not. The games that Alex Smith has not been a quarterback has been struggle for the Washington football team. My belief is that he's still out.
Nope.
Smith is back. Alex
He
Smith is
started.
back.
I can go into mine. I'll go into mine real quick, just because
Okay, I see. It's been clear to.
I got
Okay,
three players that are gonna make this impact of this game, and I'll hop into it real quick. So
go for it.
I'll just give my prediction. Washington's winning the division because I got them winning this game because there's three players playing in this game: Alex Smith, Terry McLaren, and Antonio Gibson. And I know you heard me talk about him. I am a big fan of Antonio Gibson. I think he's going to be a well-rounded back in the future. And these three players have not been able. They were out for the last two losses, and what they mean to this offense. You're talking about the starting quarterback Alex Smith, who checked down Smith, Terry, their number one receiver, who's been out. That is huge because without him in this lineup, this receiving core has struggled. And Antonio Gibson, the only one that looks like he can run the ball, outside of they should have had if he not into they missing Peterson from last year. Eagles has had injuries, has been effect. They just we talked about Andy Dalton just threw 377 yards against them. I'm not saying Alex Smith is going to do that, but with injuries and having Gibson and Terry Brack as their weapons, you should definitely see the Washington football team be able to move the ball. But the biggest thing, it's going to come down to this Washington front seven. Chase Young, we talked about. Chase Young is right there. If Chase wins the defense rookie of the year, I'm not going to be upset just because he's deserved it.
I know.
What he did in the second half to Carolina, he literally said, "Hey, I'm going to put this team on my back," and he almost did it against Carolina, helping Washington come out there almost squeezing out a win with the turnover as he calls. So I'm looking at this front seven. Offensively, Alex Smith, just don't turn the ball over. Your defense will carry you. Defensively, for Washington, don't get out of your lanes. Jalen Hurts will scramble. If his first person is out there, he's going to take off and run. Stay in your lane. And for Hurts, you just need to be able to. We saw last week his struggles. We've seen when there's tape on him since that Saints game. We haven't seen the magic of him torching defenses. For him, you just have to take your opportunities. You're going to have your opportunity against this secondary, but you got to be able to. I think the biggest thing, not turn the ball over and be able to give up those sacks.
So before we get into our picks, all right, the Eagles announced that Carson Wentz will be a healthy inactive for today's game, which means he is 100% able to play in it, but they're not going to dress him. And I have a feeling it has a lot to do with his unhappiness at losing the starting job. Who else is young on that deal?
You know what I want to see right now?
Oh, hell, real quick. Let me answer this for the chat here. You also have Montez Sweat, who has been on a tear, and Ryan Patrick Kerrigan, who is one of my favorite pass rushers um, in the league. He doesn't beat out some of these other guys, but those two are big time. But let me get back to Carson Wentz real quick. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he has been openly unhappy with losing the starting job. I don't think he's handled it well. I don't think he's handled it with class. I think that at the end of the day, when it comes down to things like this, you lost the job. Now, you lost the job because you didn't have a whole lot of help around you. You lost the job because you got sacked more than anybody in the league. You lost the job because your offensive line is terrible. You lost the job because you can't run the ball. But at the end of the day, you lost the job. And so the way you handle that is by going back to work and doing what you can to outwork. I understand you're upset about them taking a quarterback in the second round. I understand you're upset about getting your ass bitched. But is this the end of Carson Wentz? Do we see him play for another team next year in a capacity where he's the starting quarterback? Or do we see him like Aaron Donald? Sorry, not Aaron Donald, Andy Dalton, where he becomes a backup quarterback for a team, and then maybe he gets an opportunity and maybe he doesn't. I don't think he's going to find the money he wants. I don't think he's going to find. He may find the opportunity he wants, but I
He
don't
just
know.
ends up
I'm
finding he's
asking you.
already getting paid. He
No,
already has the
he's going to get
contract.
paid just fine.
He has 60 million sitting there waiting for him, no matter what, if they cut him or keep him.
Well, and Amos, I think it's a little different than Dwayne Haskins because, unlike Dwayne Haskins, Carson Wentz has won in the past. He's won over the last couple of years. I understand that he was hurt when Nick Foles ended up winning the Super Bowl, but he's still consistently won when he's had help around him. Dwayne Haskins, on the other hand, has just been terrible since he got into the league. I don't think Dwayne is a very good quarterback. I didn't think he was a great quarterback at Ohio State. I thought that it was a terrible pick to take him 15th in the first round. I thought he should have been more of a third or fourth rounder because he's more of a career backup in my mind and never should be a starting quarterback in the
Well, it just
NFL. And I
showed
thought
how
that
much.
before he got into the league.
It just showed how many weapons they had on Ohio State.
Absolutely.
But saying off that real quick, I agree. I don't think Carson Wentz is done. I think he's done in Philadelphia. I think him and Peterson relationship we've seen. I don't think it's fixable, but I think Carson Wentz is fixable. But I do think he needs to. His time in Philadelphia is done, and for him, he needs to go somewhere else to to fix his career because I think him staying in Philadelphia is not the right thing for him.
I agree. So let's go ahead and get on to these picks. Matt, go ahead and put up the standings here for me. You will see by looking at these standings right here that I am 6 games behind tying. We are doing 10 picks this week. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up because I feel like we're going to agree on a lot of these. So let's go ahead and start things off right now.
By the way, I want to show you a picture. If you want me to,
Is it your freaking crown? Are you going to put up your crown again?
No. It's it. I'm putting it in Discord. If you want me to pull it up, I'll put it on the stream. But this is my what I was talking about.
I can't look at it right now.
It's here. Let me.
Tyrod Taylor is definitely one that's had an interesting season. I think Tyrod Taylor is a much better quarterback than that will have another chance at it. I think Andy Dalton will have a chance of being a starting quarterback in the league. Looking at your chat there, Amos. You got this picture pulling up because where you putting it?
Give me a second. I'll be real quick. There it is. Image.
Got a little Streamlabs logo there.
And here it is. There it is. It's the Carson Wentz Michael Jordan meme cry face on the stream. That's what I think about Carson Wentz when you're talking about he was being inactive.
Oh, yep. I see you now. Yep. No, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it up. I'll keep it up for the rest of the stream, just like right there. All right.
Right there. All right, so let's go ahead and do these picks right here. Matt, you got the Saints at the Panthers with no running backs for the Saints. Who are you taking?
Oh, I love the Panthers. I love what defensively they've looked. At the end of the day, it's just hard to bet against Drew Brees, even if these both teams will probably have limited to none running game. I just think Taysom Hill will be a big impact for this game, so I got the Saints.
I agree with you. I'm going with the Saints. I think that if you're going to take away both running attacks from the Panthers and the Saints, their defense is more consistent, and you got to bet on Drew Brees over Teddy Bridgewater. But I know Teddy Bridgewater's been hated on a lot this season. Let me tell you, I think Teddy Bridgewater's still a very good quarterback that still has a very good chance at leading the Panthers to something in the future. I'm a big fan of what Matt Rule's doing there, so we'll see what ends up happening. Let's go ahead. The Packers versus the Bears. Who you got?
I love what I'm seeing from the Bears, but I love even more what I've seen the Packers. The Packers are looking like a NFC contender, a Super Bowl contender, and that could run away with the NFC. I got the Packers.
Agree. I'm taking the Packers there as well. Seahawks versus 49ers. Who you got?
I said 49ers might be a spoiler, but one thing they might have a good defense and players back, but the one thing they don't have is they don't have Russell. I almost said Russell. I always say Russell Wilson. They don't have Russell Wilson, so I got Seattle.
I'm taking Seattle there as well. Now we got the Dolphins versus the Bills. Here once again, the Dolphins are in a win and they're in scenario. Otherwise, they need some help. Bills already have it locked up. Bills playing for pride. Dolphins playing for their playoff hopes. Who you got?
I like Tua, but I already said it. Magic Man can't come bail you out. But there's one thing though, Buffalo, they have been playing lights out. We saw what they did against the Patriots. We saw against what they did to Pittsburgh. They're going to play, I think, this game is going to be hard for Miami. They're the team I say that won't make the playoffs. So I got the Bills.
I'm taking the Bills too. I think that they've just been playing too well. Dolphins have been struggling at the wrong time of the season. Browns at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Browns are winning in your scenario. What you got?
Oh, man. I kind of want to pit Pittsburgh just because they lost to the Jets. But since Mason Rudolph is playing and they don't have TJ Watt and Cameron Haywood, I'm going to go with the Browns. Don't let me down.
See, I needed you to go with the Steelers so I can make up some ground here, but I'm going with the Browns too. I think they're gonna end up winning this game nicely. Ravens versus the Bengals. Who you got?
I got Ravens. Unless this Ravens is somehow self-destruct, they don't look like they're going that way, but somehow they self-destruct. I got the Ravens.
I got the Ravens too. I think it's gonna end up being a blowout there. Matt, are you gonna trust that Amos is right here, that the Texans are due for a win over the Titans?
Nope. Unless somehow J.J. Watt just becomes a monster and they're like, hey, you're not going to run the ball on us. And they hold Henry down to under, I would say 60 would be the number for them to win.
Matt, I don't think a straight jacket would hold Derrick Henry under 60 yards versus defense.
That's
I'm going with the Titans too. Let's go. All right, Matt, the 1-14 Jaguars with their only win coming against the Indianapolis Colts in week 1. Do they get a second win of the year versus the Indianapolis Colts today?
I don't think so. This game comes down for more. I think the Colts are looking at this game as a disrespectful game. They do not want to be swept, by the Jaguars who go ahead the number 1 pick.
I agree with you, and I need you to start picking some teams I'm not picking here. Maybe this will be the game. Dallas Cowboys versus the Giants. All right, if Washington loses, the winner of this game wins the NFC East and goes to the playoffs. Who wins this game?
Well, I don't know who you're picking, but I got the Cowboys. Hopefully, that's who you're picking. I got the Cowboys offensively. They have looked like the offense that we saw at the beginning of the year. And I just don't trust the Giants offensively and defensively right now. They've just taken some steps back this last couple back half of the season.
You know, I think the Giants have been taking some steps back and the Cowboys have been moving forward. But at the end of the day, I think that with Daniel Jones back there at quarterback, I think that with the way that the Giants defense has been playing as of late, I'm going to say that they're going to end up getting the job done. I think the Cowboys have a very good chance of winning this game. My gut instinct tells me to go to the Giants. That's what I'm going with. Washington versus the Eagles. I think you already know what my pick on it is. Tell me yours.
Who started? Dwayne Haskins. I got the Eagles. Oh wait, he's not even. He's not even on the team. Alex Smith is starting. Terry is playing, and my guy Antonio Gibbs is playing. I got Washington.
Yeah, I'm taking Washington too. It's going to be a good game, but I think Washington
Chase
locks it up,
Young's.
wins the NFC East.
I'm making a prediction right now. Chase Young will have 2 sacks and a 1 forced fumble.
At least, bare minimum. So it doesn't look like, because we're so tied up on the matches, I'm not going to end up winning this season. And for the regular season, my only hope is to make some playoff wins here later on going through. Now, I appreciate everybody stopping in. This wraps up our very first episode of 2021 on the Double V Sports Talk. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Don't forget to go follow BuckHeels on Twitch, Volzy on Twitch. Go ahead and follow Double V Sports Talk on Facebook. Double V Sports Talk is also on YouTube. Subscribe. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Appreciate Amos and Branks for hopping into the comment section and making today a lot of fun in that regard. Make sure you tune in every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time for the WV Sports Talk on all of your weekly information, especially in football. Amos, absolutely always a pleasure. Until next time, we out. All right. I'm off.